En triathlon, les vélos ne sont pas soumis aux réglementations de l'UCI, ce qui veut dire que toutes les innovations sont possibles pour obtenir le vélo le plus rapide au monde.
So I think there were 5 new bikes, all launched at Kona, and everybody said, we're the fastest triathlon bike in the world. And it's like, well, only one of you can be right.
Quand tous les vélos haut de gamme sont au même prix, ce n'est plus une question d'argent, c'est une question de choix, d'innovation, de vision.
We really believe that we're trying to change the high-end bike industry.
Bonjour à tous, cette année en vue des championnats du monde Ironman, j'ai pris la décision dans un but d'optimisation de changer de vélo. Ce vélo, je suis venu le chercher en personne aux Pays-Bas, il est juste derrière moi, c'est le TF1 de la marque Qcycle. Ce vélo a l'air rapide, c'est d'ailleurs la raison qui m'a initialement poussé à les contacter, mais l'est-il vraiment? Pour ça, il n'y a qu'une seule vraie solution pour le savoir, c'est de le tester. C'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai aussi ramené mon ancien vélo aux Pays-Bas, j'ai envie d'en avoir le cœur net. Ce nouveau vélo contre mon ancien vélo, est-ce que le nouveau est bien plus rapide que l'ancien? Et si oui, à quel point? Pour le savoir, je me suis rendu au QG de Qcycle à Almere, aux Pays-Bas, pour partager 4 jours de testing aux côtés de leurs athlètes. Le testing se sépare en 3 phases. Une première journée de tests initiaux en extérieur. L'objectif est d'obtenir des valeurs de base avec mon ancien et mon nouveau vélo, dans la même position afin de comparer les différences de performance entre les deux. Une seconde phase de test va ensuite se dérouler sur Vélodrome sur 2 jours. Le but sera d'optimiser la position sur le nouveau vélo. Et enfin, on termine avec la 3e et dernière phase du test qui va à nouveau se dérouler en extérieur. Le but va être de tester à nouveau le Qcycle avec les modifications apportées sur Vélodrome afin d'obtenir des données finales sur ce vélo. Après ces 3 phases, nous aurons 2 résultats. Nous saurons déjà le gain net entre les 2 vélos. À position égale, qui est plus rapide entre le Orbea et le Qcycle. Et ensuite, nous pourrons y ajouter le gain apporté par le changement de position sur Vélodrome. Pour commencer ce premier jour de testing, nous avons une réunion pour nous familiariser avec le protocole qui nous attend.
Okay, folks. Good morning, everyone. What is crucial in all testing is repeatability. So we have to try to be as consistent as possible. That is also to do with speed, power, and shape of your body. So try to be as natural as possible. Don't try to force yourself into a position that is not usual for how you sit on your bike. So just try to ride as you normally do. We will measure 400 meter distance with the cones, and that is your test. That's your zone. When you're in that zone, you can't break out of your position. Otherwise, you mess around with the data. When you're out of that zone, you can take your time. You can relax. You can even stop, but when you turn around and come back into that zone, you have to be at the same speed and the same pacing. A full session would be then we would look at 7 or 8 out and backs for one session, one run. And then you come in. You will hear me when the test is finished. You come in, then we take a lactate test, glucose measurement, and the process data.
Pour tester l'aérodynamique en extérieur, nous utilisons un petit outil qui s'appelle l'Aerolab.
Basically, the Aerolab is a data logger. We have a very accurate, high engineering grade sensors installed in the system for pressure sensors, wind speed sensors, barometers, temperature gauges, and they're all high engineering grade. So for example, our GPS system is within centimeters. It's not like a Garmin system, for example, navigation system of a car that's within a couple of meters. This is very, very accurate. And what we can achieve with that is an understanding of CDA, which is drag forces and frontal area, everything around aerodynamics.
Au programme, 2 sessions sur le Orbea, 2 sessions sur le nouveau vélo. En cumulé, quasiment 40 minutes d'effort, à allure de course, à rester concentré pour essayer d'être le plus constant possible. Une tâche qui n'est pas si simple que ça.
À la fois, il faut réussir à se diriger, à la fois, il faut essayer de maintenir la même position, maintenir les mêmes watts. Il y a beaucoup de choses à penser et le but justement c'est d'essayer d'être le plus relâché possible pour que les données soient précises. Donc apparemment c'était pas trop mal. Là il y a beaucoup de vent
très froid.
Et il fait super froid. Ouais, là il doit faire 2 degrés, quelque chose comme ça. Et je préfère être en train de rouler plutôt qu'attendre. Parce que quand on roule au moins on a chaud.
Des conditions météo qui n'aident pas, en particulier sur mes premiers allers-retours sur ce nouveau vélo que j'utilise pour la première fois.
Maybe I pushed a little bit more because I was a bit more tense.
Everything's new.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, don't fuck this up.
Ce vélo sort de l'ordinaire. par son design et ça se ressent sur la maniabilité. Par exemple, la roue déportée à l'avant rend le vélo étonnamment stable en échange d'un rayon de braquage réduit. Un choix qui a pourtant été fait initialement dans un but de performance et non de confort. Alex Bock nous explique pourquoi le marché, hormis chez Scott, est allé dans la direction opposée pendant toutes ces années.
8-9 years ago, there was this philosophy based on wind tunnel testing that if the wind comes straight at the bike, that you should keep the down tube as close as possible to the front wheel. And that was absolute bullshit because nobody rides with a straight wheel. We all wobble, we move around a little bit, and that's when you get turbulence and you're coming at the wheel and the down tube. And I think one of the things when Richard really started to test the CFD, he measured through computational fluid dynamic that with changing wind direction coming at the bike, it's much better to put the down tube further back from the wheel, which was contrary to where the whole market was moving.
Ce sont ces innovations et la volonté de remettre en question un marché établi qui a initialement suscité mon intérêt pour cette marque. Ce sont ces mêmes innovations qui, en janvier 2019, retiendront l'attention d'Alex Bock, ancien manager de la team TBB.
The moment when Richard started calling in January 2019, and he said, remember we were talking about making the bikes more aerodynamics, and I've worked for the last 5 years on a complete new technology and a new front of bike. And I said, I hope you're not saying what I think you're saying, that you want to start a new bike company. He said, yeah, that's really what I want to do. And initially I started laughing and I said, Rich, I'm not sure the world is waiting for another bike company. There are plenty, there are enough. Unless you can explain to me in maybe 3 minutes what's so innovative about the technology that you have, what's so different. And I guess in those next 180 seconds he did manage to hit a couple of points where I was like, oh wow, okay.
Richard McCainch, ancien ingénieur F1 chez Ferrari, est l'ingénieur qui a développé ce vélo. Il nous partage les concepts aérodynamiques qui se cachent derrière le Q-Cycle et les innovations qu'il a cherché à apporter dans le triathlon.
The way that TT bikes or tri-bikes had developed was the focus had been on very low drag for the bike, but most of the drag is coming from the rider. So if you consider any racing car, a sports car, a Formula One car, there's a huge amount of drag from radiators, from having to fit a driver in there. And the whole concept, if you like, is to make the air do some work. So you don't just make the car as small as possible. If you want to go very, very fast in a straight line, if you want to set the land speed record, sure, you make this very long, thin, vehicle. But if you want a practical car, you've got to make the air do some work. And what I think the trend in TT bikes that has been going for 15 years to where we are now, and what it means is they all look the same, was that they were trying to get the frame really compact, and no one was actually using the air and saying, we could actually maybe, I'm pretty sure the drag of the TF1 is higher than most of these other bikes. If you put it in a wind tunnel, the drag would be higher. But what we saw from the CFD was as soon as you put a rider on it, we actually dropped the drag of the rider. So we maybe up the drag of the bike, I can't remember the exact number, but we upped the drag of the bike by 2 or 3%. But it's 2 or 3% of a very small amount. But we dropped the drag of the rider by 3%. But that was 3% of the 80% of the overall, and that's where we gained. So the starting point was get rid of the bike. And I had hundreds of photographs, a lot from Kona, where you can get a really nice straight horizontal side-on shot of people. If you take out the bike and you've got no idea of scale, so you don't actually know how big the rider is. And if you then say, well, where would I put aerodynamic surfaces if I wanted to improve the drag of this shape? Where would I put the aerodynamic surfaces? You wouldn't end up with a current TT bike. Hopefully you'd end up with something like that. Air's pretty stupid stuff. And if you can tell it where to go and it'll obey you, you can really make it do some work. So it starts with the fork. And this, you know, the air. Sorry, I'm doing it again now. Sorry, you'll have to cut that bit out. What is it? The fork airstream technology. There you go. That was it. I can't remember all the marketing slogans. That's okay. There were certain enabling technologies that were coming in while I was thinking of this concept. One was finally getting the acceptance of roadies to go to disc brakes. So it was clear that was going to come. And that's obviously the key one, because once you go to disc brakes, you remove the design restriction of having to have the crown of the fork over the top of the wheel to fit the rim brake. So I already thought if we could move the head tube up in between the rider's arms, that can open up a lot of access to do something with the flow. At that point, I wasn't really sure what, but you could do something with the flow. And then when you, again, when you look at the rider in an aero position and the path that their knee traces, it was clear what we wanted to do with that flow. The down tube acts as a splitter. So if you look at the action of your knee largely follows the down tube. So the down tube is always acting as a splitter. Whereas if you look at a conventional bike, you have the fork, then the down tube, then the big open triangle with a lot of turbulence, and then the knees are thrashing around in that open section.
Cette première journée de testing se termine. En attendant le traitement des données et les résultats de ces premiers tests, nous passons à la seconde étape. Le lendemain, il est l'heure maintenant de nous rendre sur le vélodrome pour optimiser ma position sur le vélo.
This will be very short. There are, obviously at the velodrome, the facilities are a little bit different than yesterday, right? Technically, we shouldn't get too cold today, but you never know. So yesterday we worked with the outdoor, with the Aerolab system. That is our preferred technology. It's a technology that's really less than 12 months old. The Alpha Mantis system is an older system, so since 2014, which is an indoor track system. And that's used by most of the World Pro Tour teams.
So we use a system that basically takes power, speed. We also measure air density, and that is an equation that the software does the calculation in order to get the CDA, which is the coefficient of drag, which means how aerodynamic a cyclist is. So our protocol normally is we do 8 laps in the velodrome, so that's 2 kilometers. And after 2 kilometers, we take the CDA, the average CDA for that run. After that, we make changes on the bike or on the cyclist, like a helmet or posture. And then we measure the CDA again, and we see if we have improved or not. And therefore, we keep doing changes until we find the fastest configuration. We normally test at the power that the rider is going to race at, which is more realistic.
When we had this team together in Valencia, we had Daan de Groot, good duathlete, strong rider. He was already for 1 year on a TF1. So you could say, well, he was quite tuned already. In a day and a half, the team here found 18 watts for him. And I remember his face. He stood there like, that's the best Christmas gift I've had in 10 years. Because how to train off 18 watts. We'll do more technical updating on the velodrome once we're there, because we got time. Do not get intimidated, if they're there, do not get intimidated by the riders in front of us. That's the Dutch national track team.
Okay, so the idea is on Tuesday you ran outside on the dike and we got some base numbers. What we're doing now is setting you back up. We'll take a baseline run and then we will start working on your position on the TF1, looking at the CDA changes each time we make a change to your position. We will find a path to improve you and get you the best aerodynamic position related to a TF1.
Ce vélo est fait sur mesure. Il va donc me permettre d'atteindre une position que je n'aurais pas pu atteindre sur mon ancien vélo, car sa taille est standard et l'amplitude de réglage était trop limitée. 12 semaines avant ces tests, je me suis rendu chez mon bike fitter, Sam, de Paris Bike Company. L'objectif était de prendre les mesures nécessaires à la production de ce vélo. Dans une quête pour l'optimisation, Richard et Alex partagent la philosophie que, pour qu'un vélo soit le plus optimal possible pour chaque triathlète, le vélo doit être construit sur mesure.
And we're always trying to make the body adjust to the bike. And I believe that should be the other way around.
This is why the concept has to be rider specific, because for the aero to work, the rider always has to be in that. It's all very well putting the hardware in the right place under the rider, but you've got to do that for every size of rider for that always to work. And I've never really understood how that works for other bikes, because when they give you this with the world's fastest tri-bike, which one do they mean? Is that the small with this rider, or is that a medium with that rider, or is that a large with that rider? At least with this, no matter what size rider you are, the relationship to those components are always where they have to be aerodynamically for you.
J'entame alors les premiers tours de piste sur vélodrome de ma vie. Une expérience plutôt fun au départ. À ce moment-là, je ne le sais pas encore, mais c'est plus de 150 tours de vélodrome en cumulé qui m'attendent sur ces 2 prochains jours. Entre chaque test, les bikefitters présents proposent les prochains réglages à tester en fonction des données qu'ils récoltent.
This is me right now.
This is the last. We were saying this is more the Frodeno style. Yeah, like
It's the best style, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good model to look at.
But was it faster when it was longer?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's just more comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's better.
So yeah, it's better.
La fatigue physique ne se fait pas trop ressentir. En revanche, devoir rester concentré sur sa position, sur ses trajectoires, installe petit à petit une fatigue nerveuse. Fatigue contre laquelle il faut lutter pour garder des données stables. Mais le jeu en vaut largement la chandelle. On arrive à la fin de ces 2 jours de tests sur vélodrome fatigués, mais avec de belles améliorations.
Well, obviously, this was a very intense week, and we had a lot of fun. You've done a lot of hard work as well. You know, with yourself, I think you've done 21 runs. One run consists of about 7-8 laps of this velodrome. And then it's no longer about comparing the bike, but now it's really adjusting, the connecting the body to the bike and starting to optimize step by step. Reduce the stack and reach, extend, you tested different helmets. Testing is really letting the numbers tell the true story, be transparent and draw conclusions from that. So I think overall, I think we're really happy and hope you had a good experience here as well.
Le lendemain, nous retournons une dernière fois sur les docks pour la dernière phase de test, avec les mêmes protocoles que le premier jour pour obtenir les valeurs finales du nouveau vélo. Nous nous retrouvons ensuite au QG de Q-Cycle avec Alex et Richard pour débriefer les résultats.
So this is a little summary chart of maybe the 5 most significant runs out of all the runs that we did. This is your baseline on the Orbea, which did not change. You were very, very consistent on the Orbea. You had a CDA of 0.263. Outdoors, initially on the QTF1, it was 0.246. We then move indoors, so without the wind, the CDA appears worse. The CDA number goes up because we're no longer measuring the wind. And then this was back outdoors, so with all the gains that we'd found in the velodrome, this was back outdoors. So we saw you go actually from 0.246 to 0.234.
Ultimately, big picture, the first part of it's part A. That's a like-for-like comparison between your current bike and the TF1. We did that outdoors, and without having you tuned, and it was only your second time you actually rode the bike, there was a 5-6% deduction of CDA. Then we did 2 days of indoor testing with tuning and went back outdoors to see how all of the tuning affected the outdoor numbers, and that was the second part, part B, of the improvement, and that was 6%. So overall, from coming in as an athlete into a test with your current bike and now going home, you have about an 11% reduction in CDA, which I think we are very proud of, but it is also consistent with other brands that we've seen, like the Felt IA, the Trek Speed concept. So it's not a total surprise, but it's consistent, and I think we're proud of it. A total reduction of 11% CDA, then I'm an athlete. And then you're kind of like, well, what would that roughly give me? And so for your case, if we kind of like within this, using the formula, not taking elevation in mind, not changing temperature course, but you could say in this process, there's been about 2 kilometers per hour average for 180 kilometer Ironman distance that would have been saved. How much time would that equate to? Take about 12 minutes on a full Ironman, or about 6 minutes on a half Ironman. And that, for some athletes, can be the difference between being in a top 5 or 10 position, or moving from a top 5 to a podium position. And in some cases, that might mean the difference between qualifying for Kona or not.
Les résultats sont tombés. En théorie, je suis capable de gagner plus de 10 minutes sur Ironman. Je garde quand même à l'esprit que je viens à peine de me familiariser avec le vélo et que d'autres modifications sur la position semblent encore pouvoir être apportées.
Your position is very well established in terms of your frontal area. We didn't get too much work on elbows and your shrugging position, everything. I think that's something that we would pick up.
Comme nous avons pu l'observer récemment, ces innovations ne sont pas une lubie isolée de KooCycle. Depuis leur création en 2019, plusieurs marques se sont engagées dans la même voie, celle de sortir des standards de l'UCI pour créer un vélo plus rapide. Certains vélos se rapprochant beaucoup des brevets déposés par KooCycle, mais l'équipe est prête pour ce challenge.
Ultimately, when you wait long enough, of course, there will be people that will try to replicate, get closer, work around the pattern. That's not unusual, but that's kind of like the beauty of working with Richard in Formula One. That was the only game. What did the others do? How do we innovate? How do we create new things? And I'm very proud in that sense to work with an engineer that's smart and that never stops questioning and is always looking for new concepts. But we also in the ecosystem now have bike fitters that come with new ideas. We work with technology companies that say, hey, have you tried this?
À travers cette semaine de tests, nous venons de partager les prémices de l'aventure KooCycle dans le monde du triathlon. Je remercie Alex, Richard et l'intégralité de l'équipe pour leur partage et leur transparence absolue. La prochaine étape, c'est maintenant logiquement de se donner rendez-vous sur une course pour essayer en situation réelle ce nouveau vélo. Alors, on se dit à bientôt.